All right, Doof Wagon, Smitty McWingnut, Clutch Alignment 101. Classes in session. It's so stupid. Okay, so clutch alignment. So there's two things about clutch alignment. One is like the physical layout of the car, is making sure that the center line of the crank is parallel with the jack shaft, right? And don't just think about this thing in 2D. It's in 3 dimensions. So your crankshaft not only has to be like, if you look straight down on the thing, you know, a straight line through the crank and a straight line through the jack shaft, but also if you look at it, you know, like from the back end, you don't want your engine mount to be twisted and have the engine be riding at a funky angle compared to the jack shaft. So it's critical those 2 points are parallel to each other. And step 2 is the center to center distance. So a lot of people adjust belt tension by like pulling back on the engine, which changes obviously the center of the crank to the center of the jack shaft, that center to center distance. That changes the shift out on your shifting. Really the way to adjust belt deflection and belt tightness is by taking the secondary and squeezing the sheaves a little bit. So I think you have a team tied secondary or the TSS4. Those you can, so I can't spin it because everything's strapped down. There's an adjustment nut on this style of clutch that allows you to like manually just very easily take those sheaves and squeeze them together a little bit. And that will obviously raise the belt in the secondary and put some tension on it. Mine's a little loose right now. It's actually not creeping and it could stand to be a little bit tighter. But I can tell you that the center line of the crank and the center line of the jack shaft are exactly 11 inches because that is the belt that I run. So clutch alignment, there's 2 different things to look at. So obviously making sure that the primary is the correct distance, you know, laterally across the car in relation to the secondary is in the correct distance laterally as compared to the primary. I can tell you that at least with my secondary, right now it's in a very close approximation to where it needs to be, but I also float my secondary. So I can take my secondary and slide it side to side. That's about a grand total of 3/8 of an inch, but I can tell you that at about that distance right there, that's spot on. So by allowing your secondary to float a little bit on the jack shaft, it will always want to live because there's so much tension on the belt, right? When the primary closes and it starts to pull into the spring-loaded sheaves of the secondary, it will lock that into position and put it where it needs to be. So letting your secondary float a little bit, make sure that the belt is always happy. The other thing you can do is you can measure off, basically run the RPMs up on the engine and get the the primary to close and pull the belt in and then slowly back it down without letting anything move. You can then clamp a straight edge to the back side of the primary and measure the distance at the front half of the secondary and at the back half of the secondary. And just make sure, one, that will tell you if it's, you know, parallel this way, right? Those numbers should be the same. And then it will also tell you what the proper offset is so that you can put some clamps on there. But that means every time you have to move the jack shaft, you have to kind of like put those clamps back at whatever that distance is, which is another reason why I float the secondary. So anyway, I think that pretty much covers it. Like I said, double check, make sure everything is perfectly parallel and perfectly centered, just as close as you can. And then 2, make sure you've got a little bit of room. I would strongly suggest floating that secondary at least like 1/8 of an inch on each side. So, you know, mine's trapped by the bearing on one side and I just have a split collar on the jack shaft on the other, and that's what locates it. On yours, however it is, just give yourself a little bit of wiggle room and that will give you some space to work. So that's it. All right, catch you later. Good luck. Bye.